Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaEngine.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Our first question comes from David5109. How would you feel about a Four Swords game for the DS? It would work great if everyone only needed one DS card to play, and I personally think we're due for a new Four Swords. If it can't work on its own, then it could be a sub-game like the first Four Swords was. What are your thoughts on this? I think it's a great idea. I mean, the Four Swords was a great, coming from someone who hasn't actually played it yet, I think the concept's a good idea, and from what I've learned about the game, there was some unique stuff in there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the multiplayer Zelda. I think that it's a good idea to bring back Four Swords. The DS is probably the perfect platform to do it on, and, yeah, I don't see why not. I don't see any argument against it. And as a spin-off game, there's really no reason that it has to be connected to another Zelda game. That actually seems like it'd be a more awkward method of doing it. It should just be its own thing. Nico Bellic 117 asks, do you think Skyward Sword will have a super guide to help you complete difficult dungeons? If it did, would you support it having one? Yeah, I think I would. I mean, no matter what kind of feature they implement, if they tried to implement a feature where, they made it so that anyone could get through the game and enjoy it, even if it was really hard, and they actually made the game really hard along with this, I'd pretty much be for it, unless it's some kind of crazy idea that I haven't thought of that just wouldn't work. And the Super Guide is pretty much a feature that I think has been proven to work. You know, I would love to see that in a Zelda game. I'd love to see a way to make it difficult, but to make it so anyone can get through it. It appeals to both, you know, kinds of gamers. As I believe I've discussed in the past, I'm at the point where I think that there's no excuse for a game to not really appeal to both. So, yeah, I would support it, and I think, as for the possibility of it, I'm not sure. That's a little tricky because Nintendo has done this trend of using this method, this basic same idea, for all of its recent games, making them quite hard and for hardcore gamers, but then they add these features so that anyone can play them. At the same time, I feel that they've always sort of treated Zelda differently. They've taken it a little more seriously than other games in their repertoire, if you want to call it. But, so it's hard to tell what they're going to do with Zelda. But I would support it, and I hope they go for something like that. Some way of making that appealing for both types of gamer. Strange Cognitivism asks, hypothetically, what would your reaction be if Retro Studios took over the Zelda franchise temporarily like they did Metroid? Okay? That would probably be my reaction. I mean, it would be weird, but I'd have no major complaints. The thing is that Retro Studios has proven that they can totally do a game series. They can totally make an awesome game with it. Although I felt they made some mistakes with the Prime games, I just don't feel like they make bad games. So, in that regard, I wouldn't be complaining. At the same time, it'd be incredibly weird, because Retro Studios primarily takes up series that have been sort of dropped. That's primarily what they do. Metroid wasn't exactly dropped, but it was kind of at the same time. And Donkey Kong Country certainly was. As for Zelda, I think its team knows what it's doing. I don't think it really needs a team drop. I think that Retro Studios could possibly inject some new ideas into the series, or an appropriate return to what's needed if the current Nintendo team, or whoever's working on it, doesn't manage to get to that point. I think if they can't, Retro Studios definitely would get it to a point where Zelda fans would be happy with it. But I don't think we're at that point yet. Maybe I'd be more for it, or more like, yeah, that's what we need, if, I don't know, Zelda games keep declining, but I think they're going to get better, personally. I'm a little more hopeful. Jacob Welch asks, how do you feel about Ocarina of Time 3DS not being a release title, and how far away could it be from the handheld's release? To be honest, I don't really care a whole lot. I don't think Ocarina of Time 3DS is going to be this major thing that I'm not that excited about, to be honest. It's just going to be Ocarina of Time with, you know, a new paint job. I don't really care that it was pushed back. I mean, I'm not too, I don't know, worried about release dates and stuff that much in general. If a game is pushed back, I always think there's got to be a reason why it's pushed back. Some light disappointment at that I'm not going to get it as soon is usually displaced by the fact that it'll just get better. And also, I rarely get games right when they come out anyway, so it doesn't make a huge difference to me. As for how far it'll come out afterwards, I'm not sure. I imagine it won't be terribly long, though. I don't really know how long this game has been in development, but the fact that they're talking about it and that they've supposedly promised that E3 will bring a lot of news on it, I don't know. I think that it's coming soon. Majora Man asks, is there any backstory behind the question mark, hand in the toilet guy in the Stockpot Inn at midnight at all? Nope. He's just he just fell in. Poe Mischief asks, where did the hero's outfit come from? Was it ever explained? Not quite. I mean, basically the hero's outfit comes from the first Link, the first hero of Hyrule who wore green clothes. The idea, I think, is basically that, at least the idea is, the games where the hero's outfit is considered important, it's an outfit inherited from the heroes of legend, which eventually that has to be traced back to one specific hero. But, as for which hero that is, we have no idea, because even though we can now confirm that Skyward Sword may indeed be at the beginning of the timeline, or at least before Ocarina of Time, if Minish Cap maybe at the beginning of the timeline or whatever, but, at the same time, they keep adding on new games to the beginning of the timeline, so that doesn't mean much. I don't think we're ever going to see the end of it, necessarily. One thing is that a lot of people believe that Minish Cap is the origin of Link's hat. This is because at the end of the game, after Link loses Eslo, the talking hat, he actually, Eslo gives him a normal green cap without the talking bird part. And, I think one of the creators actually stated that this was the origin of Link's hat, and that doesn't make any sense, because it's just a hat. I mean, I guess it's the inheritance of the, inheriting the clothing kind of idea, but I don't think that really, that seems like so minor and abstract, the hat part. I don't think that means a lot. I don't think that necessarily proves anything about Minish Cap's timeline placement. Basically, yeah, I guess that answers your question. Saria90210 asks, in the beginning of Majora's Mask, it explains that you're looking for a special friend. At the end, it plays Saria's song, so I assumed that Link was searching for Saria, but I heard he was looking for Navi. What I want to know is, who is Link really looking for? Well, I bet you certainly hope he's looking for you, eh, Saria? Interesting username choice for this question. Yeah, I think it's basically confirmed. Well, it's not confirmed, but it's really pretty much an accepted theory that it was Navi he was looking for, because Navi actually leaves Link at the end of Ocarina of Time after he goes back in time, and also because of the split timeline, Saria didn't necessarily even become a sage, so she may have never even been separated from Link to begin with. The idea that he's searching for Saria I've never actually quite heard that. I always thought it was like he was searching for a friend, which ended up being Skull Kid. But I think it's really the Navi thing, because Navi's the only character who's missing, who left him for no reason at the end of Ocarina of Time, etc. Yeah, that's about all I can say. It's not proven, but it's pretty much accepted theory, and I really do think that's what they intended. Last question. Darren Terry asks, I have 2 questions. Yes, I know it's cheating, but do you really care? Not really, I guess. I mean, I picked them both because they were decent questions, decent enough of questions, so, yeah, sure, why not? I'll read the first one here. My first question is, if Nintendo's next big console release after Skyward Sword was a new anniversary disc which contained all of the 2D Zelda games put on a Wii disc, how would you feel? I wouldn't care. I mean, whatever, I think that, despite the fact that I complain that remakes are unnecessary, that Nintendo should focus their attention on, new games in the series, that's one of the reasons I'm not that excited about Ocarina of Time 3DS. I don't think there's anything wrong with re-releases. It's the remakes, taking the time and energy to remake an existing game, that I think is weird. I think that when they have, they just take existing games and release them again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just another way for people to experience the game, get new people into it. There's nothing wrong with that, and I think that would be actually very cool if they released the disc. I'm not sure if I'd necessarily buy it, I might, but it would be a good thing. I think a lot of people would buy it, because a lot of people haven't gotten to play the older or more obscure 2D games. Maybe the 3D games are the main thing of the series. And your other question was, you have said in your videos before that if Nintendo did a futuristic type game with Zelda, you would prefer a steampunk type game. How would you feel if Zelda took a Final Fantasy style approach with all the technology but still had medieval weapons like swords with a new twist? Well, that depends, really. Are you talking about Final Fantasy like Final Fantasy VI, which was actually really a steampunk thing, just with a slight more emphasis on technology? They had a lot of machines, but it was still very steampunkish. Or are you talking about stuff like, I don't know, Final Fantasy XIII, where there's, fantasy and swords and stuff, but then there's also the big technological city? I don't mind the idea of, this primitive, stylized steampunk technology, but I do mind the idea of high technology, talking about real full-on science and, futuristic machines. I mean, they're two distinct styles, and the real futuristic thing I really don't think works with Zelda, and it very much contradicts Zelda's actual inherent style. Steampunk, on the other hand, goes quite well along with that style. Alright guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions to the contact page listed in the description, and I'll see you guys later. One thing that, derp.